Hi, I'm Colin Stagnito, Senior Vice President for Media and Marketing at AOPA. I'm joined today with Dan Schwinn, Founder and CEO at Avidyne.
AOPA keeps flying safe, accessible, and fun by protecting your freedom to fly. We are the most trusted one-stop resource for all things related to general aviation. Become an AOPA pilot today.
About a year ago, Garmin issued a service bulletin announcing part scarcity for the GNS 430 and 530 navigators. And AOPA members reached out to us to ask, what does this mean and how is Garmin going to continue to service these avionics? I had an interview with Garmin back at the NBA Business Aviation Convention and Exhibition, where Garmin was able to give us an update on what their future plans are. However, there are alternatives, and one of those alternatives comes from Avidyne. So Dan, you've had a slide-in replacement for the GNS series for some time. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, Colin, and thanks for having me today. Avidyne introduced our IFD series of GPS Navcoms, quite a few years ago, and one of the defining characteristics of them was that they were slide-in compatible with the Garmin GNS 430 and 530 and some of the sort of similar products that they have. So they've been out in the market. They're very well established, and thousands of them in operation. And to date, there's been some amount of demand because of the age of the products that we're replacing, but I think that now you have a situation where more and more people are talking to us because either their aging GNS product has broken, or in a lot of cases, if people are operating more than a couple of airplanes, they don't want to be faced with the prospect of having the downtime associated with trying to figure out what to do when one of these things fails. So this has certainly become an active topic for us. And there's really three main products in the product line. There's the IFD 550, which is our flagship, and it slides in where a 530 would go. There's a 540, and then there's the 440, which is the smaller form factor that's associated with the Garmin 430. So these products slide in. They're compatible with virtually all of the devices that those Garmin things will attach to, which in general aviation, there's really a large number of both current and legacy products that a GPS navigator and Navcom can need to communicate with. So we implement all those interfaces. We originally designed it in the era of the 430, 530 to be very easy to transition from those earlier products. So one of the things that's not really all that well known is that the top 10 things you do with your GNS work the same on an IFD. There's a volume control knob, there's a swap button, you turn the left knob to tune the radios, you tune the right knob to do the FMS functions, there's a direct to button, you press direct to, enter, and you're going direct to, and so forth and so on. So it's actually, not only is it an easy transition from an installation perspective, but it's an easy transition from an operational piloting perspective.
And we saw, I wanted to mention that AOPA had a sweepstakes airplane a few years ago as an RV-10. And we had an IFD 550 in that aircraft. And exactly like you said, we found it to be a really easy to use device and had some really great additional features that we had not seen on a GNS. You want to talk about some of those features?
Oh, there's so many features. I mean, remember, this product was designed something like 20 years later. It's got way more underlying things like processing power and memory and more colors in the display and a much higher resolution display, and all these kinds of technical specs are 20 years newer. Some of the things, the big highlight feature in the IFD 550 is it does have an internal attitude reference system and the ability to do egocentric synthetic vision display. So it's kind of like a mini PFD or standby, and that's really why that product has been so popular. It's also a slide-in for a 530, so you get that additional functionality just by putting it in. I think the other sort of highlight feature that everybody sort of focused on at the time was touchscreen. At this point, people take touching a screen completely and totally for granted. And what we've done with the IFD series is we said, okay, this is there are reasons to like buttons and knobs, but you got to be able to touch the screen on your product. So we did what we called this hybrid touch user interface, and the idea of hybrid touch, just like it sounds, is that you can do virtually all the functions either using the touch function or using the buttons and knobs. And that has been tremendously appealing, especially to pilots who fly light planes, where they tend to fly lower and they're low wing loading and they bounce around a little bit, or helicopters. Those have been, that's been a really important feature to a lot of people in aircraft that don't spend all their time cruising around, without a lot of bumps happening. So that's been good. I think that the much higher resolution of the map, and the fact is that people kind of spend a lot of time on their map page, has been something really like. And I think the other big differentiator that we hear a lot, especially from guys whose real job is to fly an airliner or a business jet, is they say, we like the fact that this is a real FMS and it's not a point-to-point navigator that's had some things added on. So they really, really like the fact that it's structured as an FMS, works like an FMS. It's infinitely easier to use than the stuff they're using in their air transport aircraft. So they love that. But it has all that kind of functionality that they expect out of an FMS. Obviously, that doesn't apply to a lot of casual pilots, but to the pro pilots, it's definitely something that we hear about quite a bit. It's also something you hear about from the flight schools who are trying to train people to go move up into that equipment. They want people to start flying on something that looks and feels like an FMS because that's what they're going to do for their careers. And that's been a big sort of selling point to that specific audience.
There is another feature that Dave Hirschman, who managed our RV-10 sweepstakes airplane, talked about, really enjoyed, and that was the ability, the geo-referenced waypoints, where it sort of predicts what waypoint you are starting to enter based on where you are.
Right, we call that our geofill function. So when you go to select a waypoint, and you can do this by either typing on a keyboard on the screen or twisting a knob as has traditionally been done, it's going to, rather than doing an alphabetical list of waypoints, it's going to do a geographically sorted list of waypoints. And almost always that means you can get a waypoint in the first two letters, which is a super sort of workload reduction. And especially if you're putting in some complicated IFR clearance, you're not exactly sure what the spelling is. If you can get the first two letters right, you're probably going to be able to find it. So that's been something that people really, really have appreciated.
Yeah, that's a super clever feature.
Yeah.
So you've had the IFD 4 series and 5 series out for 10 plus years. And as if people are going to trade in, or are going to slide out a GNS and slide in an IFD, one of the questions that they're going to ask now is, what is the serviceability of these units into the future? What happens when you start to run out of parts?
So one of the interesting things is, how long you support a product is basically a financial decision. So how many parts do you buy when the parts become obsolete? And, how much effort do you put into replacing parts that become scarce? And so the Avidyne philosophy is to support this stuff, longer than anybody can remember. And in fact, all the products that we've ever built are still being serviced by us. So one of the factors of this is it might be slightly more expensive, especially as the products get really old.
And so your oldest products are 25 years? I know you're founded 25 years ago, but what's the oldest product that you're still supporting?
Years ago, we combined with Ryan International, and they had some products that were 30 plus years old. So servicing those things.
Wow. Okay.
So yeah, we're servicing products from before we were born, and it's basically a decision to make on the cost to do that, and certainly we have had incredibly positive feedback on that. We have we have a lot of older products, like company that's been around for a while does, and Of course, we'd like people to buy the newest and latest and greatest thing, but we provide service alternatives for people with their products of any age from Avidyne.
Well, Dan, we really appreciate all the time that you've spent here, especially answering the question of what customers who have a GNS that they can no longer repair can do with the IFD. That was really informative. And appreciate everything that you do for general aviation and the support that you give.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you taking the interest, and I know that there's a lot of people who are asking a lot of questions about this because I hear it every day.
Yeah, I can imagine. All right. Thank you very much.
Thanks a bunch.